All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming to this last normal session here at 12 noon Mountain Time of Pinpoint. We're going to be talking about the state of the industry, more or less. What's going on in the address data, location data world, as well as getting an idea of the Smarty roadmap from Brent Francom, the director. What is your title? Something product management king, something like that.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
King of product management.
Yep, and we brought in guest Berkeley Charlton, who is the founder and CEO of Gateway Spatial. So we've got a ton of expertise here. I'm happy to turn the time over to Brent Frankham to give us more of an idea of where we're headed and what's going on. So, Brent.
Thank you, Andrew. And it's my privilege to be here with my good friend Berkeley Charlton, the man, the myth, the legend, the geocoding enforcer himself. Welcome, Burke. Good to have you.
I'm really glad to be here, Brent. I really appreciate the invitation to present today.
So we're excited to talk today about kind of the predictions for the location data industry and how Smarty is preparing for that future and those predictions and where we see ourselves down the road. We also like to pick Burke's brain and get his thoughts on where the future of addressing is going and geocoding. One of the things that I'd like to ask you, Burke, to start off with is what are some of the forces that you see that will shape addressing and geocoding within the next 3 to 5 years?
There's been a term floating around for a while, which is called hyper localization, and it seems that whenever the next great breakthrough of of address location, the topic of address location comes up. I remember back in the old days when getting a zip code level geocode was considered pretty good, and then it went to a zip 9 or a zip plus 4 geocode, and interestingly back then they called that rooftop. It seems surprising now, but it was like some usually within a block. And then it went to interpolated, which is sort of estimating where along the street segment. And then it went to parcel centroid. And some parcels were really big, like, a square mile or something, but that was still considered very accurate. And then it went to, finally went to a building footprint or a rooftop. And then it went to sub-building. And now, I've already heard it. It's like, well, I need to know the elevation or the floor height above the ground within that building, or what part of a structure, a single address structure are we in. So it seems like no matter how accurate the underlying data is, there's always a need for more of that. And then one of the big things also that's come up, we see it a lot in EMEA, but also in various states, which is around data privacy laws are really has everyone on edge right now. And so I think geocoding companies and addressing companies are trying to walk the line between what can we legally and comfortably provide, that will accommodate most states. New Jersey, for example, and a couple other states have really introduced some new laws that have made it challenging to know where to draw those lines. So that is some big things.
Yes, and a lot of the data privacy that we're seeing right now is that we know GDPR is a big one, but even
Yeah.
locally, you're seeing entities that don't want data leaving a particular area. One of the things that we've done to do that is, or to help with that, is to be able to do regional API endpoints. So, for example, if your data is in the EU, we're going to keep it in the EU, and provide you with an endpoint that number one provides better latency, better speeds, but also allows us to host the data locally
Yeah.
in that area.
Yeah, it gets complicated. For example, the U.S. Postal Service has laws saying that certain types of data are not allowed to be hosted in countries other than a U.S. the United States or a U.S. territory. Canada has similar laws regarding their SERP, some of their SERP data, and of course the EU. The EU is been very difficult. Well, I should say challenging in that ways in terms of understanding what the privacy laws for different data elements, and then certain countries even within the EU, like Germany, for example, there are certain elements of their data can't ever leave Germany. So it just becomes a challenging environment, and it underscores the need to have a data provider and a SaaS provider who can manage all that for you. I don't want to use the word safe harbor too liberally here, but to be able to have a company that you work with who understands all of the laws and regulations that a company needs to abide by, that vendor can provide that safe area in which to be able to use that.
Yeah, and that's what we're striving to do here at Smarty, is to be that vendor that you can trust to understand those privacy laws and those those localization laws that are only going to get more strict. I don't see them loosening up anytime soon. So, kind of another force that we see and hear all the time, it's in our regular everyday language now, is AI. It's something that's not going away. It's something that's improving industries. It's something that a lot of people don't understand. So Burke, where do you see AI in this world of addressing and location data?
I certainly don't feel qualified to be a futurist talking about AI. So I can just talk about it with a very, very narrow scope of the industry that we're talking about. It's been floating around for years now, even within the address validation and the geocoding industry. So let me just say for the record, I'm a huge fan of what AI is doing. It's kind of scary. One of my own kids graduated in humanities and fortunately just found a full-time job, but wow, it was a different job market because all the entry-level jobs have been eaten up by what AI is doing. However, some of the things that I've been finding myself able to do with AI are kind of mind-blowing. And now, in terms of finding the right address, or parsing addresses and understanding the context of where the requests are coming from, I find AI to be really kind of amazing that way. But there's one part of AI that it hasn't yet made a big dent into the address validation in the geocoding industry, which has been the notion of authoritative data. When I say authoritative data, I'm talking about whether or not an address actually exists as defined by the United States Postal Service or as defined by various county and city governments, as far as this is actually an address. We can't rely on AI to be able to make that up because, I mean, it could make some assumptions, but as soon as you start using sloppy data or assumptions as far as what is a real address and what is not, or in fact, if you don't use a good source of address data, it's the whole garbage in, garbage out paradigm that even AI is reliant on this authoritative data to make good decisions. So, and that is what Smarty really specializes in with their various data sets, is having authoritative data sets, both for the US and international, as far as this data, this is a real address, or we're confident this is a real address. And then we find some of our customers are using that authoritative data to feed their machine learning models and their generative models in order to be able to use that to make decisions. I haven't seen yet where AI is going to be replacing this concept of having authoritative data sets to be able to feed those machine learning models.
No, I completely agree. And your comment, the garbage in, garbage out, that really applies to addressing in general as well. if you don't have those authoritative data sources, then you're not going to have that hyper accuracy that you're looking for, especially if you're geocoding and trying to have that pinpoint precision. If you don't have those authoritative sources, then it's just going to be garbage. It kind of reminds me of, my wife says I can't eat cupcakes and expect to be a bodybuilder, right? Same thing with AI. If you're
It doesn't stop you from trying, but
that's true. But it hasn't worked so far. So one of the things that we're doing here at Smarty that's new on our roadmap that we're really excited about is Model Context Protocol, MCPs, which is an open standard that lets AI apps, chatbots, coding agents, co-pilots that connect to an external data source or tool through a simple interface. So what that means for Smarty is that we'll build this MCP and you'll be able to plug it in, and it's a simple way for the AI assistants that are already part of your system to safely use our address validation tools and data. So, for example, you have a chatbot, you can say, give me the rooftop geocode for this address right into the chatbot, and it'll connect to our system through that MCP and bring back the data that you're looking for right within that chatbot. So it's a quick way for you to implement address validation and our data sources into your system, into your AI system that you're already using. So we're really excited about that and excited where that can take us.
Right.
Let's talk about your belief about the future of location data. So what's your most contrarian belief about the future of location?
For years, I've been hearing about crowdsourcing location data, and it seems to come up at least once a year. I see some vendor who's hot on the bandwagon of crowdsourcing, and this is not a new thing. It's been going on for 10 years, and then they're trying to blend that in with with AI models and things like that. The problem I have, maybe I'm contrarian here because it seems to come up all the time, and I just have to kind of squint and kind of wonder, what do how do you see this being applied? I think crowdsourcing definitely has a place, especially when you're looking at a point of interest, like a business location, where a business can say, Google or whoever else, or TomTom or someone else, you've got my location wrong, and this is my actual location, and I'll take ownership of that. And then, in fact, I would encourage most businesses who are looking at their data on some sort of a website or a search site to make sure that's right. Or this crowdsourcing can also be a part of sort of a members only kind of site where that's data that's owned by that's owned by a particular search company or some sort of a membership organization of some kind to be able to locate that address correctly. But in terms of crowdsourcing for 190, 200 million US addresses or international addresses, the opportunity here for inaccuracies or fraud, or like, for example, someone says, I'm moving my location for my house to this part of the parcel where it's outside of a flood zone.
Right.
Who's going to trust that? And I believe that if Uber wants to say, I've got an internal, I have an internal system for saying that this is this actual location of this address that I've delivered to multiple times, then they're going to own that. But they're probably not going to be sharing that. Or a lot of these companies like FedEx or UPS or Amazon, they're not going to be sharing these refined locations with other people because these become a real competitive advantage to know these exact locations. So I don't think crowdsourcing has a very, very wide scope other than point of interest and company specific point of interest data. Maybe I'm contrarian in that, and I'd love for someone to explain to me how I'm wrong.
Well, it kind of goes back to your previous point about authoritative data sources. Like, those are the ones that that you can trust. There could be a play for crowdsourced data with the right checks and balances in place, right? One of the things that we're looking at right now, a process that we're improving is what we're calling our provisional address data. So we know that we don't have, one of the things that we don't have regularly is our new build data or new addresses that come about. And we know that a lot of our clients, a lot of our customers have that data. And so this provisional address process would allow you to send us those addresses where we would scrutinize them and go through a cleansing process, and then plug those into our system before they even get, and allow you to use them within our applications before they even get to to the USPS or other sources that we're using. So that's something that we're really excited about. It should be coming out here in the next few weeks.
Great. I look forward to seeing that. That's real hard rock mining. That's hard work. One thing I've seen Smarty do is for people to be able to call into Smarty and say these addresses are right, or these addresses are wrong. You need to change the location or add these addresses. And that's by nature of what it is, a fairly small scale operation. And I'm not saying it's not important, but it is. I'll look forward to seeing how the provisional addresses work for you.
Yeah, we're excited about that. Another one of the trends that we're seeing and that we're hearing about is enrichment data. So being able to tie, pieces of metadata about a property, about a location, to a particular address or a unique ID. So talk to me about that trend and your thoughts on enrichment data and how you see that progressing in the future.
Well, I'm a huge fan of enrichment data. I think, in fact, it seems redundant to talk about address validation and geocoding or other data sets. I've noticed that Smarty is getting deep into enrichment data for property data, for county tax roll data that's being enriched, or for various other for risk data and things like that. I think that's a really smart way to go. Except in the absolute purest sense of the word, and even like let's say for mailing applications, we talk about it a lot, but really most of our users, only a relatively smaller percentage of our users are using it purely for mailing applications. It's really all about finding more information about Smarty's users want to know about the location of the property or the some other elements of it. Is it a non-postal or is it within a certain community or on and on? There's all kinds of decisions that people want to make, about the risk profile of a property, something else that they want to know, and that by nature is enrichment. So enrichment is being done either by Smarty or it's being done by the user, but it is being enriched. You could even say the mailability of an address is really an enriched part of that address. They're sending in the street address, city, state, zip, and then getting back all this metadata about its mailability or about what actual city or suburb is something it's in. That is all enrichment data. And what I see a trend happening right now that's really big from multiple vendors, not just Smarty, but other vendors are saying, we're going to shortcut that enrichment part of it for you and tell you a lot of different things that about this address. You send it in, and then you're going to get back all this metadata about the risk score or about what neighborhood it's in or about what tax jurisdiction it's in. This is all enrichment data, and I feel like we're getting closer toward this being the norm where vendors are going to be providing this enrichment data to the end user. Maybe 80% of all the enrichment data you need is being provided by the vendor, such as Smarty.
Yeah, and that was brought up in the previous session with Mountain West Farm Bureau that previously when a new user a new insured would want a new policy, they'd have to know all of the information about their property, about their location and what's around it. And now that the users expect that all to be pre-filled and tied to their property. Because, if I buy a new house, I'm not going to know every detail about that house
Yeah.
and what's going on around it, but somebody does. And so, we want to be that somebody, and we've tapped into this enrichment data world, and we're slowly building out additional data sets. And one of the key things, and I think you'll agree with me, is that unique unique identifier that's tied to each one of those enrichment data sets that can be, to assist you in that data blending and making sure that you have everything tied to that exact location.
Yeah, and this is a trend here. Is in fact, I think Harvard Business Review a few years ago did a scholarly paper on kind of how do we get to the next step of addressing and geocoding, and they really highlighted having a persistent unique identifier for every address, because a lot of times you'll have multiple addresses that all will key onto the same location or even to the same building. And having that persistent unique identifier joins that all together. And once you have that unique identifier, then all of the other data, especially polygon data or risk data or things like that, can all be joined together around that persistent unique ID. And one thing that Smarty's done that I think that I really applaud has been this creation of a master address list, which in my opinion, is the best product of its kind in the market. It has, well over 200 million addresses or aliases of those addresses that are all tied to a unique ID. And then with that unique ID, companies then can create their own data sets with that unique ID, whether it's risk data or whether it's neighborhood data or whether it's just property attributes, and link all of that together on the unique ID. And it's really I think that's the next wave of what's going to happen. It's been kind of slow to adopt. It's almost like if you've been using the products in a very traditional way, you have to almost unlearn everything that you think you know about addressing and geocoding, and then relearn it using a persistent unique ID, and realize that makes everything so much easier to be able to do that.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Okay, shifting gears a little bit, and this we're going right into your wheelhouse. The
All right.
importance of geocoding precision. So, talk to us about when rooftop versus parcel versus street level precision. And we talked about this. You talked about this a little bit at the top of the session, but when does that actually change outcomes? And talk about the risk of interpolation in there as well.
Okay. The thing about geocoding, which is that geocoding is in fact is there such a thing as a perfect geocode? I don't know, maybe. But it's really about getting closer and closer to what actual truth is. And I said it earlier, like, for example, it used to be a zip4 level geocode, used to be called rooftop. Well, now we know it's not. You can actually put a geocode on top of a building. So that is closer to rooftop. But when does it actually matter? When does it actually matter? I would say for most marketing applications, where you're looking at maybe a generalized proximity to a shopping mall, where a trade area for a shopping mall, it's a destination point. It could be 15 or 20 miles. How much does a rooftop geocode matter in terms of defining this amoeba-shaped polygon called a trade area using drive time polygons? Not very much. How much does a rooftop geocode matter when you're defining a broadcast viewing area where you're measuring the signal degradation over the course of 50 or 100 miles? Not very much.
Right.
How much does it matter? Well, but how much does it matter now for cell tower in the middle of a big city? where the strength of that cell signal could be measured in blocks. Now we're talking rooftop really matters in terms of looking at detailed coverage areas. Or if you're looking at whether or not a house or a business is within a flood zone. Now we're talking, I mean, that can matter in terms of 50 feet can make a big difference.
Right.
There are rooftop, or if it's in a wildfire area where flammable undergrowth or brush can run right through the middle of a property, then even a parcel level geocode may not be accurate enough, but a rooftop level geocode really matters. Or for delivery applications, obviously rooftop matters. So there are different applications where it really matters. More accurate is always better. I think there's especially in some, I would say, operational applications where you can't make a decision without having an accurate geocode. We always love to talk about P&C insurance because the examples are so relevant and easy to understand. But there are other applications as well.
Right.
I
Yes,
mean,
Stripe brought up a good example yesterday in their session around tax jurisdictions.
exactly.
The hyper accuracy of that geocode was critical in determining the taxes that need to be paid. You know, there's no, depending on what county you're in or even city, right? Sometimes those lines between cities are pretty crazy, and having and knowing exactly where your property sits can determine how much you're paying or not paying, right?
Oh, I know. And it's just evil the way this happens in taxation. Not that I hate taxes, I'm just saying the way the companies, municipalities will say, we're going to exclude this specific parcel from city taxes for 5 years or for 3 years. And they will exclude specific parcels or a side of a street for, say for this 1.5 mile segment as a tax-free or tax-preferred zone. And so it's not even just enough having the right zip plus 4. It's you need to nail it exactly right. So I mean, and this happens enough that it's a real thing. And I did listen to that Stripe session. I thought that they really nailed the point here is that the more accurate that your geocoding data gets, it has a material benefit in terms of the taxes that get paid. Most corporations don't want to get in trouble with the taxation authorities, so they overcompensate on the side of paying more taxes because the penalties are too huge.
Right.
If you can confidently say in that case that this property or this area is not in a special tax district, then it really pays off, and the ROIs can be enormous. One last point before I move on here is that there have been some studies done with property and casualty insurance companies that say that the difference between getting an interpolated geocode and a rooftop precision geocode, the ROI is measurable even in a single company in terms of millions of dollars a year,
Right.
in terms of the risks that they're able to avoid or to price correctly in that situation.
Right. And, another example is from the enrichment data that we were talking about is, knowing what the elevation is of that building sits. Like if I have an interpolated geocode and it's sitting in a floodplain, but then, and it's 50 feet away from the building, but that building's sitting up higher, that takes it out of the floodplain. Combining that enrichment data with your geocode gives you more granular insights into that property and how to assess it.
100% agree.
Great, good. Anything that was it? That's all you had on geocoding? I thought you had more.
I don't think we have enough time. I could talk all day, but I think I looked at your potential agenda here. I think you got more things you want to ask me, so we should
I was
probably
going to
move
say,
on.
I just don't think
outline.
Burke likes geocoding.
I'm a complete and utter geocoding nerd, and I could talk about it all day long.
Well, because of that, I do want to just give a time check. We're got 20 minutes to go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's talk about international addressing. I know that this is one it's a difficult subject to tackle. It's one that we're determined to do here at Smarty, and as part of our future roadmap is improving international addressing, verification, geocoding. So for vendors that are in the international space, what are some warnings or your top gotchas for anyone in that space?
Well, I've I've managed large international geocoding products and portfolios and been involved in the implementation for decades now. It is it just can be horribly complex, and because every country has nuances with language and addressing structures. And I'm not just talking about India, which is, borderline impossible, but still, I think one of the most asked for countries. And so it's getting better. But it's like having 25 different geocoding systems and addressing systems within a single country, or maybe more than that. But I'm talking about the nuances between Germany and France and Czech Republic and Turkey, fairly well populated countries, and one of the big challenges there is in the U.S. and to a large degree Canada and the UK. I think we're accustomed to getting geocode accuracy rates at the property level well above 80%. In the US now, I think that I looked at some of the Smarty stats and I tested it. I think Smarty is in the 96, 97% range at the rooftop and parcel level.
Right.
So we maybe take that for granted, but even in France, you're lucky to get maybe 60%. And so what happens to those you don't get a rooftop geocode for, or a property level geocode for? What do you do with that? Well, then the real trick becomes is how do you cascade on to the next most credible level, and do you believe that level? For example, is fallback to a postcode centroid? Is that the next best level, or is it a municipal centroid?
Right.
Well, to complicate things, I would say it depends. In France, for example, and I've seen a lot of evidence of this, there's about maybe a handful of metropolitan areas like Paris and Marseille and Lyon, whatever, that where you have many postcodes within a single metropolitan area. So clearly, if you get a postcode within the city boundaries of Paris, that's going to be a lot more accurate than getting a municipal centroid. But then there's rural parts of France where you have many municipalities like villages and that fall within a single postcode. So there you need to be able to identify, is this city smaller than the postcode it falls within? This conceptually is not a hard thing, but putting that into practice is a difficult thing. I've noticed that Smarty has been working hard at creating these fallback methodologies, and I think that's really important. And it varies country by country.
Right.
So generally in the US, if you get a zip 4 geocode, or a zip 9 as Smarty would say it, that's generally going to be a lot better than getting a municipal geocode. So
Right.
So it just kind of depends on the country, and so the vendor that you pick there really matters in terms of getting that cascade.
One of the things that we're working on is in improving that geocoding, and we're starting with the bigger countries first, the ones that we can that make more sense, and then growing from there. We know that it's a difficult task, but it's something that we feel like is important, and as data improves, as time goes on, we get better data from even some of the smaller countries. So we have opportunities to improve the customer experience and what they're getting from our international products.
Okay.
Anything else you wanted to on your mind?
Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about kind of what I touched on earlier, is the complexity. The international addressing and geocoding is extremely complex, and I have seen companies literally that have had teams of 30, 40 people um, hiring in consultants and bringing in to try to implement a global an international geocoding and address validation system, and bringing in multiple products and trying to do it all on their own. One thing I've seen about how Smarty's doing it that I really admire has been the simplicity that Smarty brings to this, and there's a certain strategy that has to be in place here. So I'll just say right up, if 90% of your business is in Turkey or Czech Republic, you should probably just go find a local vendor who's
Right.
going to do that for you, because that's too critical. But if you're a global company and most of your business is in Western Europe, say mostly English speaking, and then the balance in Western Europe and Japan and Australia and whatever. So then it would make sense for you to go with a single vendor who can cover all those countries at a very, very deep level. But again, if most of your business is in one country, then maybe what you should do is just get a geocoding system or addressing system for Czech Republic, and just work with that, because it would be too critically important. The history of international addressing is littered with the remains of companies who have tried to assemble a sort of a pass-through service. Well, we're going to use this web service from France, and this web service from Turkey, and this web service from South Africa, and try to harmonize it all together so it brings up a meaningful result. That worked for a little while, till one of those vendors changes their protocol or changes their platform, and all of a sudden you're just stuck. It's better to work, I would say, with one company that can harmonize it all internally, or use single data sources, and keeps it simple, and say we're going to be the best imaginable in these 5 countries. We're going to be super good in these next 20 countries, and we're going to be good enough in the other 100, because you've got 85 to 90% of all the usable addresses are going to get covered here.
Right.
If it's really important, you need to get Czech Republic, then that could be a supplement. But you may be doing it on a Windows system that's separate from everything else you're using.
Right. Yeah, in some of those smaller countries, it's almost like, can we just be the best of the worst? Because it's so difficult.
That's absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, I appreciate the insights, Burke, and your vision into the future of location data and addressing and geocoding.
My pleasure.
Happy to take any questions now, if there are any from the chat or have been submitted.
I don't have any questions. Everybody's just been soaking it in.
It's good to hear. Well, we're excited where Smarty's going in the future, and we're excited that our customers are here to take the ride with us, and our products are continuing to grow, and continuing to solve those problems that you have, and as we identify more things that we can do to solve your location data needs, we'll do it. So thanks for your time.
Thanks, everybody.